Rates and Barrels. It's Friday, October 24th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Britt Giroli, Fabian Ardaya joins us to begin the show. We're going to dig into Dodgers Jays, as we promised on yesterday's show. Both Fabian and Mitch Bannon joining us to answer some questions as Game 1 approaches on Friday night. We had roster release on Friday morning, Fabian, and a few tweaks for the Dodgers. We did learn on Thursday Alex Vesia is away due to what the Dodgers are saying is a very personal matter, so just all the best to him as he's away from the team throughout this series. So Vesia and Ben Kasparius removed from the roster. Edgardo Henriquez and Will Klein added on in their place. Still no Tanner Scott. Familiar question for you. Who is in the Dodgers bullpen circle of trust for this series? Because my hunch is that they're going to have to use a bullpen a little bit more in this series than they did in the NLCS.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be getting necessarily 8 innings out of every starter like they did the first couple games of that Brewers series. I do think that in Circle Trust, it's Roki Sasaki, first and foremost. Like, everything sort of starts with him, which is still like a somewhat tenuous place to be just because this is all still so new. He had the layoff, which will probably help get those mechanics back in line to where they were at the beginning of this postseason. But it's him, it's Blake Trinan, and obviously it was always Alex Vesia. If you're looking for a left-handed option that he trusts, I would probably go with Jack Dreyer there, who is a rookie who I had to learn who he was when he got added to the 40-man roster this past winter, but he is a typical Dodgers find where they just find a guy with a crazy induced vertical break who is an undrafted free agent who is all of a sudden one of the more effective rookie relievers in baseball this year, and how he's a guy who is firmly up in the circle of trust entering this World Series.
Is Emmett Sheehan in there?
I would throw Emmett Sheehan there too. That's right. Okay. Yeah, and he's a guy who the numbers haven't necessarily been great this October, but he's a guy that like Dave Roberts firmly trusts. Could be one inning, could be multiple innings, could be kind of a fireman scenario. Like, he is the guy who, if he really finds it, this World Series can really shift a lot for the Dodgers.
Speaking of finding it, it looks like Andy Pages has been looking for it and hasn't found it in this postseason. Does that create any intrigue in the outfield at all? I mean, you've got Enrique, who just, does it every October. You've got Alex Call. Do you think there's going to be any changes to the lineup, or just going to be pretty vanilla going forward?
I don't think there's going to be any changes to the lineup. I think the more drastic thing was right before game 4 of the DS. They moved him down to the 9th spot in the order, and I think that's about where they're going to be with him. I think they still trust the center field defense at this rate, and also knowing that late in games, if he'll lead, you kick him to right, and he's elite in right. And they're going to value that defense and know that, like, if he does figure it out, there's a lot of pop there that can sort of lengthen out this lineup more than maybe an Alex Call necessarily would. But yeah, I mean, Pages is someone who's definitely been a focus for Dave Roberts in these recent days. Like, it seems like every single day during these workout days, Dave has been talking with him and Teoscar Hernandez, who's been kind of a mentor to Andy Pages, having long, extended conversations just about approach, about making sure his swing is fluid against how different pitchers are going to attack him this postseason. Obviously, this is his first postseason in a real full-time role, and you've seen the impact that scouting has had on him. Like, they have put him in a lot of positions where they're going to make him get himself out, and he's sort of listened to that and sort of gone and got himself out. So that's something that they've been working with him on, and I think that if things click into place, the upside's still just so high there that you're not going to remove him from the equation and just still bank on the defense making him playable.
So, Fabian, obviously this is a team full of stars, but is there someone in mind that maybe people who don't pay close attention, or who you feel like maybe could impact this team that isn't quite so obvious?
Does Will Smith not qualify just because, like, he sort of gets forgotten, even though he's a 2-time All-Star? Like, I think he's the guy who, like, when he came off with the broken hand, I thought, like, all right, his value in the lineup, even if he's not right, is still more than what Ben Rorbett was providing. But, like, I've actually really liked the at-bats he's had since coming back, which was a surprise considering he basically took a month off from seeing live pitching and is still, like, recovering from that broken hand. But, like, the quality of at-bats are there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a good World Series. And that is, like, everyone's obviously talks about the big three with Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman, but, like, when the Dodgers are really humming, it's Will Smith, and he's a guy who had a really good year before he broke his hand. But he was going to be in the conversation for the batting title, having the best full season of his career. And the Dodgers had done all this with his workload to try to get him peaking at this time of the year. Because obviously the last couple of years, he kind of faded in the second half. And even last October, like that was a real grind for him. The hits he did have were like really critical hits, but like it's not like he was really tearing the cover off the ball in October. So I think he's a guy who I could look to have a pretty big series here.
We've been wondering, Shohei Ohtani, where's the splitter been? Is it a wrinkle that we're going to see again at some point? Is it a pitch that he hasn't quite regained the feel of coming back from the second TJ? What do you think the story is with that pitch in particular?
I think his splitter in the last start was the best it's been. And I think everyone sort of agreed, like, that's as good as it's been. I think the one splitter he threw, I think it was to Durbin, that kind of like broke in on his hip. Like, that's as nasty of a splitter as I've seen from him since his Angels days. I think part of it is just sort of, he kind of had viewed it a lot as kind of parts of the rehab progression. Like, there was the stretch when he first was coming back where it was basically fastball, slider, and that's basically what he was throwing. And he was 1 or 2 inning bursts, and that's what he was doing. And then I think once he got to like 4 or 5 innings, all of a sudden he had, I think it was a start against the Phillies where he just started going curveball, 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 split. It's like, yeah, I'm past that part of my rehab progression, so I can throw these pitches now. The way he talked about pitching in big league games as a rehab progression was like still jarring, especially because of how well he'd pitched since coming back anyways. But yeah, I think it's something where like it's still parts of the progression, but I think the splitter, the amount that he leaned on it in that Brewers start in CS, I think that's kind of a good indicator that he's got a good feel for it now. And when he has that going with the cutter, the curveball, not to mention obviously both sliders he has were pretty good in that start as well. Like, it's such a deep arsenal. I think it might just be a matter of what he has on a certain day.
It's so remarkable because you can't take Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, and put him on a rehab assignment while he's hitting in the big leagues. So, you had to do it this way, and it's so remarkable that he did it so well. In the past, he had like a 700 OPS in the days that he pitched. Did he say anything about getting the monkey off his back and having that big game as a hitter while he was pitching? Have you ever heard him talk about, being fatigued as a hitter on the day he pitches?
That was a sore subject during the CS when we spoke and he was sort of scuffling. And that stuff came up because Dave Roberts had kind of said, like, he admitted that the numbers had kind of shown that he hadn't hit as well on the day he pitches or the day after he pitches. He noticed that on days that Ohtani pitches, he looks to end the at-bat quicker. A lot of more early outs and sort of mentioning that. So that became a subject when we talked to Shohei Ohtani. And he seemed a little short with his answers and basically kind of pushed back on the idea. And I do think that he didn't necessarily vocalize it to anyone, but I think talking to people around the Dodgers, there was the word that they kind of threw around was edge. Like, there was an edge to Ohtani going into that game for the CS, sort of knowing that the offense hadn't been there most of the postseason.
Fueled by rage.
And there was also something like where like the two-way stuff is something that he is always kind of clung to, and that's also like he loves to sort of do stuff that people
and he's
say
had to defend it, right?
Yeah, it's always been something he's had to defend it. Now it's time where like he's kind of defending it again, and this was something where like he's always excelled at doing stuff that people say he can't do. So like there was something to that, and then you saw him switch up his entire hitting routine. He hit on the field, which is something that the Dodgers had not seen him do since his first spring training with the team when he was coming off of the elbow surgery, and that was just kind of a mandatory part of the rehab. That was the first time he'd done that. He did that again before after the workout last night in Toronto. So like he started doing that, and they said that kind of freed up how he sort of saw the ball come out the bat. He's a guy who pulls the ball more than most guys, and normally when you're pulling the ball in the cage, you can't really tell ball flight because it's being hit into the net. Seeing
it gets hit to the side of the cage.
Yeah,
you can't tell if it was like a foul or not.
Yeah. So being able to stay on it that way with the visual of the field seemed like that opened things up for him. But yeah, I still do think that like it's something that the Dodgers are considering. But like I think one thing that they're kind of that sort of shows their thinking here is the fact that he is starting Game 4, not Game 2. Which, if you looked at how they sort of were talking going into this postseason, they wanted to have him start on a day before an off day. So that way you can sort of mitigate that factor. But now, obviously, this is not going to be the case. If he's starting game 4, where there's a game before, game during. It's the stretch of 3 in a row. And they're sort of throwing him in there and telling him to figure it out. And I think that's a lot of trust and faith in what obviously Shohei Ohtani is capable of doing.
Fabian, speaking of Dave Roberts, do you think if they win, I know a lot of people are talking about whether they're a dynasty or whatever the legacy is. I want to know about Dave Roberts' legacy. Like, if they win again, are we going to continue to hear that Dave Roberts should be fired from a faction of the fan base that we hear all the time? Do you think people are maybe going to appreciate his role in this and what he's done? What do you think about kind of where he stands here on the precipice of another potential World Series?
I really think that perception kind of shifted after last year, honestly. Like, last year was really the inflection point. Like, and he's talked about this. Like, this has been kind of talked about ad nauseum, but like, if they lose that Padres series, he probably is gone. So like, that's a huge inflection period to go from possibly losing your job to all of a sudden, like, people are talking about your Hall of Fame chances, which are really high at this point. Like, I would be surprised. I would not be surprised at all if he like winds up in Cooperstown one day as a manager. And obviously, like, every sort of title he wins from that on, like, kind of cements that legacy even further. But like, I think that is when things kind of shifted. I think that things kind of shifted for this era of Dodgers baseball, where it's sort of had been seen in a lot of ways as, like, obviously this paragon of success in the regular season. But Mark Walter, the owner, even said as such to Shohei Ohtani when he was pitching him, like, he saw those 10 years as a failure because they only won one title. Adding another one makes it less so, and obviously a third one kind of increases the argument that this is not just a dynasty, but like, this is something like what the Dodgers kind of always say, like, is the golden era of Dodgers baseball. And I think it's hard to really argue otherwise, especially if they win this title.
So you think without this title he's in, though, Fabian? Because that is a little bit more interesting to me.
It certainly is an interesting case, just because, like, you look at the regular season success, I think it's the highest winning percentage ever for a National League or American League manager. Like, Tommy Lasorda's in, and he has 2 titles. Sort of compared to like Walter
You'd have
Alston,
to add
like,
some longevity, though, right? Like, you'd have to do it for a little bit longer. He doesn't have the like win totals that usually the Hall of Fame managers have.
Yes, right? But like, I think he would be still set up for like that sort of run. Obviously, with getting extended after last year and everything like that. Like, I don't think necessarily too much of his legacy is hinging on whether or not they win these next 4 games. Is sort of more what I'm getting at.
He's only 53. He's got 20 more years of managing if he wants it, right?
If he wants it, yeah. He has talked a lot about like burnout and stuff in the past. I don't know like how long he is going to sort of do this, but like, it's hard to really argue with the job that he's had and that he's done so far. Obviously, like, with all it was sort of made about this regular season and it being seen as a disappointment to only win 93 games, like, they're still in this spot, heavy favorites to win the World Series again. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm being a little ridiculous with the 20-year thing, but 3 to 5 more years on top of another title or 2, and I think he's got that resume pretty much locked up at this point. A last question for you, Fabian, as it pertains to Game 1 in particular. We learned the Blue Jays are going to throw the rookie Trey Yesavage out there. Before the Dodgers left for Toronto, were they working on trajectory? Were they doing anything to try and replicate Yesavage's very unique over-the-top arm angle?
They were looking at traject, and they ran into an issue when it came to their pitching machines, so the angle didn't get up high enough that they could replicate the angle. They maxed it out and tried to replicate it best as they could. But yeah, they did work a lot on the traject. And that was something I talked a lot with Rob Van Scoyoc, the hitting coach, yesterday, just about like, how do you prepare for a guy that is unique, who also none of your guys have ever seen? It's not like you have 1 or 2 guys like, all right, this is how you hit this guy. Like, nobody has seen him. No one sort of looks at, like, can sort of get a real good look at this. Like, how early can you anticipate guys being able to make adjustments? And he pointed to, obviously, the traject, to their advanced scouting, sort of knowing what areas to look at, and just in terms of, like, where to see this pitch, where to see this pitch, and just sort of hope that, like, these guys are Hall of Fame hitters. They can figure it out and make the adjustment quickly. He said that he kept repeating, like, they'll be ready from pitch 1, they'll be ready from pitch 1. But obviously, it's one of those things where, like, I feel like it has to be one of those things, unless Yesavage just doesn't have the command early, or it clearly doesn't look good early. I think I could see him sort of having some early success against these guys, just because, like, there's such a lack of familiarity. It's so unique, and that's gonna be something where second time, third time through, if he gets to a third time through, it'll be interesting to see what adjustments they're able to make in game. That's something that the Dodgers, when they were really struggling offensively during the stretch of the season, where it was like a month and a half where they were in Pirates territory offensively, which was a tough place to be in, they kind of talked about their inability to adjust in games. Like, this is going to be a big test for that, to adjust to not just what Yesavage and the Blue Jays are trying to do to them, but also like just the whole thing of how it looks, where it's coming out of, how the split looks coming out of hand, how, if anything, that you can do to sort of differentiate between that and the fastball.
Yeah, I think the other challenge, aside from the machines not really getting up over the top like that, you probably don't have a coach on staff that can even replicate that. You can get a left-handed coach or something, but a right-handed over the top with a big split like that, not easy to find. Fabian, we appreciate your time and your insight. We're looking forward to reading your coverage throughout the series.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
That's Fabian Ardaya, great beat writer covering the Dodgers here at The Athletic. Now it is time to check in on the Blue Jays side of things. Let's check in with Mitch Bannon, the Blue Jays' great beat writer here at The Athletic. Mitch, the rosters just dropped for the World Series here in the last few minutes, and Bo Bichette is on it for the Jays. The big question is, how healthy is Bo? And then what implications are there for the other guys in the roster if Bo's good enough to play and be in this lineup in some capacity?
Yeah, I think he's certainly not 100%. Like, I don't think there's any way that this is a full strength Bo Bichette. Like, if he was fully healthy, he would be playing shortstop. There'd be none of this, him taking ground balls at second base, no discussion of how they're going to navigate essentially having two DHs on the roster in him and George Springer. But from what I've heard, his bat is like pretty good to go. Like, he's been seeing live pitching for a couple of weeks now. It's really been the defense and running that's been the issue. And at the end of the day, the bat is Bo Bichette. Like, he's never been a premier defender. His speed has kind of waned every single year during his career. Like, his bat is his value. And when you're going up against a behemoth like the Dodgers, you'll take every bat you can get. And so they will have to get creative. They'll have to see how he looks in these first couple games. This guy hasn't played a game since September 6th. Like, this is essentially 7 weeks without playing a game or playing a single rehab game. So there could be rust, but I think at peak, he's your cleanup hitter. He's either playing second base or DH. He's driving in Vladdy, driving in Nathan Lucas. He led this team in RBIs despite missing last month of the season. Like, he is the perfect kind of guy to clear the bases when they get guys on. But it is, the first couple games are really going to be just a question of how healthy he is.
Yeah, we don't have starting lineups for game one. So at this point, we don't have the Jays' first preference of who plays the field between Bo and Springer. But if you had to speculate as to what they'll do in game one, who do you think is more likely to have some defensive responsibilities in the series opener?
I think we might see Bo Bichette at second base. Like, I think they might try him out at second base, keep Springer at DH, and just get Isaiah Kiner-Falefa out of there. Like, that's certainly a defensive downgrade. IKF has been in the lineup essentially for his defense and his ability to control the zone. And you know what? He kind of had some big hits, especially one in Game 7. But I think they'll give Bo a go. George Springer during the regular season, when he was mostly healthy, graded out as one of the worst defensive outfielders in baseball. And so now you take a 97-mile-per-hour fastball off the knee. The Jays and John Schneider say he can play the field. Springer says he'll be good to go to play the field. I'm just really suspicious if they're going to give that a shot, because it's like a non-compromised Springer is a bit of a liability out there. And so a 1D Springer, I would rather that guy at DH and just see what you got at Bo Bichette. Hope he only gets 2 ground balls in a game.
Yeah, 75% of Bo Bichette defensively at second base, probably better than the current version of Springer powering through that knee issue. The other question ahead for you with Bo, the live pitching he's been seeing, who has he been facing, right? I know every team has extra guys at the ready throwing in case someone goes down with an injury, the roster replacements, but who has that been for Bo, getting him those live looks?
Yeah, so in the division series, he was facing Chris Bassett and Max Scherzer, who we can remember were not on that roster and were kind of integral parts of their CS win. So those guys were presumably pretty locked in and pretty good competitive live at-bats. Lately, he's been facing, from what I've seen, Justin Brule and Bowden Francis. So, like, maybe not the future Hall of Famers and former All-Stars like Bassett and Scherzer. These are guys who've been like kind of pitching and staying ready all month. And those are the options that he was hitting against on Thursday, the day before the World Series. And Yeah, okay, you're going from Bowden Francis to Blake Snell. Have fun, Bo.
Hey, it's better than going from just the pitching machines. The trajectory machines are pretty good. We talked about them a lot on this show. One of the other big surprises is Trey Yesavage getting the ball in game one. Not a total shocker with Gausman having pitched out of the bullpen on Monday, so it keeps him on more regular rest. But even Yesavage hasn't started often on 4 days rest as a pro. So what are your expectations for him in a huge spot in game one?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I feel like we have to talk about just like the pomp and circumstance and all the noise and all the bright lights, but like that's been 60% of Trey Yesavage's big league career at this point. Like it's been the biggest start of the season for the Blue Jays every single time he's taken the mound for the last 4 starts, and this is going to be his 6th big league start. So I don't know whether he certainly seems like the type of guy who has the disposition to kind of carry through these moments, but I'm sure there's also an element of like, this guy's never made like a May start against the Kansas City Royals when both teams like have 500 records and it like really doesn't matter. He doesn't know any different. All he knows is like taking the team on his back. So I think there's like an element of benefit there where it's like, yeah, this is kind of just normal for Trey Yesavage. Game 1 of the World Series, cool, we'll let it ride. But in terms of the stuff and the decision to start him, I think it has maybe a little more to do with Gausman than it does with Yesavage. We've just seen Gausman be so much better with extra rest down the stretch and into the postseason. And so you don't want to trot out a compromised Gausman, fall down 0-1, and then have to trot out the rookie in game 2. You might as well kind of just take your shot with Trey. He hasn't been pitching particularly deep into his starts in the postseason. Not that really anybody aside from Shane Bieber, maybe Max Scherzer have been doing so. Those are the only guys to really pitch deep in a game. So I think Bieber's the only guy to complete 6 innings. So I don't think he has like, in terms of a workload, it's not like, it's a bit of a different 4 days of rest for Yesavage, but I also expect he probably is not going to deliver you 7 innings today. So if he gives you 4 1/3 good innings, I think the Jays would happily take that and then turn to their bullpen against the Dodgers lineup. That will be quite the challenge for a Jays bullpen that's been a bit hit or miss.
Yeah, one thing we had talked about on the first part of our World Series preview on Thursday is that the Jays are not built in the rotation like the Phillies, right? They're all right-handed in the rotation unless Eric Lauer is in there starting games. And even in the bullpen, they don't necessarily have a flamethrower from the left side. Brendan Little's a good left-handed reliever. We talked about some of the concerns with his command, but they don't have an Aaron Ashby. They don't have that guy that you'd say, we could try 2 or 3 matchups against Shohei Ohtani with this guy. What do you think the Jays are going to do as far as varying up the looks and picking their spots as they try to get the matchups they want against not just Ohtani, but the top of the lineup as a whole, right? It's kind of Ohtani and Freeman and Betts and Will Smith, thinking about the 2 lefties and the 2 righties and how they're always kind of staggered in a way where you're going to get a mismatch somewhere. How are the Jays going to manage it?
Yeah, I think we're probably going to see a lot more Mason Flaherty than we've seen from the Jays so far in this postseason. Like Little and Flaherty are kind of, those are their leverage lefties. We have seen like a shockingly little amount of Eric Lauer in these playoffs, even when the Jays have kind of needed multi-inning appearances. And those guys, albeit both kind of weird arm slot lefties, are kind of very different looks. Like Little is kind of straight out. He's probably going to try to get you to chase. Flaherty is a little more over the top with the sweeper and the cutter that he's been using. And he had, albeit one game, probably like the moment of Mason Flaherty's season was coming into a bases loaded situation at Dodger Stadium and striking out Shohei Ohtani. So it's like, I think the Jays will take that sample size of 1 and at least try it one more time. But I also expect we'll see a little of Sir Anthony Dominguez and Jeff Hoffman in these matchups. They have the splitters that basically every single pitcher on this Blue Jays staff has, but they're kind of their leverage guys that they've trusted. I wouldn't feel great if I was a Blue Jays fan about Jeff Hoffman facing Shohei Ohtani, given Hoffman's homer issues this year, but he's looked really good in the postseason. The stuff hasn't necessarily been electric, but he's just getting outs. He's just finding ways to miss bats. And you saw it in that Game 7 at bat against Julio Rodriguez. Hoffman didn't necessarily have his best command or his best stuff. Like, he didn't really let the moment get too big. And he struck out 3 Mariners batters on balls. And so it's like, at the end of the day, you can make a mistake or the batter can make a mistake. And Hoffman's just been making fewer of the mistakes in the postseason, which has helped him kind of mitigate the home runs. So I expect we would see them get creative. But in terms of the lefties, I think it's going to be Flaherty and Little. And if I were to guess, I think it's probably Mason that gets the first crack at those guys.
Yeah, it's going to be just really interesting to see what the situations look like, how tight the games are in those spots too, right? I think that's the other thing that sort of guides the pitching decisions in the postseason. Like, you get deeper into your start if your team opens up a 2 or a 3-run lead. I think about that with Bieber and Scherzer and how their starts, they really changed how they were pitching when they had some room to work. They could expand where they were locating a little bit, and that made hitters chase a little bit more because they were pressing. And that also took a lot of wear and tear off the bullpen. So it's almost like the best way to save your pitching staff is to get some run support early, but you're doing that against a rotation that's been as good as any rotation we've seen in a recent postseason up to this point. So, another big question, last question for you, Mitch. Everyone's wondering, you have a low K offense. The Jays led the league in strikeout rate as a group of hitters. You have a high K rotation with the Dodgers. What wins in this battle?
Yeah, I think this is almost going to be different than what we saw from the Mariners or the Yankees with the Jays in the first 2 rounds, where Toronto's contact played really well in those series. They not only got the contact, they hit a bunch of home runs, but those teams threw the Jays a lot of fastballs. And that's a pitch that really plays in to Toronto's contact-oriented offense. It's a straight pitch. You're able to just at least get a barrel on it, at least get something on it. That really plays into the Jays' hands. The Dodgers' top pitchers, they throw a lot of off-speed stuff. So I think this is kind of a new challenge for the Jays, where it's like making contact with those nasty breaking balls and secondary stuff from like Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Whole different ball game. So I think the Jays are probably going to have to flash their patience in a different way than they had to against guys like Carlos Rodon, Max Fried, and basically every single Mariners starter is the most aggressive starting pitcher in the league. So this will be an interesting challenge. And I don't think they're incapable of it. I think we'll see Davis Schneider against Blake Snell. That's going to be an interesting test of kind of Toronto's overall approach, because he's one of the most patient hitters in the league, but he struggles against high fastballs. So it's going to be who bends to the other team's weakness in this point, or who just sticks with their strength. I think if he's hitting second in game 1, that'll be very telling of kind of the collective approach both teams come into this series with.
Yeah, that's interesting. We just haven't seen a lot of Schneider because the matchups haven't really called for it, but could be an important matchup piece, especially in game 1 against Blake Snell. And I've been blown away at how effectively the Dodgers can just bury fastballs, just not throw that many of them. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on any lineup. So how the Jays handle that will be fascinating. Mitch, we're really looking forward to your coverage throughout the series. Thanks for taking some time to join me this morning.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
It's Mitch Bannon, covers the Blue Jays for us here at The Athletic. All right, so let's talk about the series as a whole for one last time before it begins. And Britt, I'm going to give you the opportunity to dispel the narrative of your choice from this World Series before it begins. Pick any one that you think is utterly ridiculous and feel free to just tear it to shreds for us.
There is a lane here where the Dodgers don't win. There are many lanes here where the Dodgers don't win. I don't know if Toronto's getting enough credit nationally. That is kind of bothersome. Other storyline wise, I think when you look at this team, like, do the Blue Jays have the stars that the Dodgers have? Yes and no. Like, they have Vlad, Springer's been amazing, but they don't have that huge star power, right? But I think their lineup and their ability to make contact, and this isn't like a bunch of Cleveland Guardians singles, right? This is a team that makes contact and also hits for power. I don't think enough people are giving credit to Toronto and to that lineup and the depth of that lineup. You know, I covered a lot of that ALCS. It's not just the Vladdy Springers and the Alejandro Kirks, right? It's not just the meat of the order. It's that 7 to 9 that's pesky, that's troublesome, that has the ability to extend innings. And because they put the ball into play, good things can happen. So I think that the Toronto Blue Jays are being really underestimated here. I know the Dodgers are the favorite. I'm fine with that. But I do think that we are kind of looking at this series as like, oh, the Dodgers dynasty, the Dodgers whatever. The games have not been played yet. They have not been played yet. And I think that there is a lane for Toronto to win.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the bottom of the lineup. I had this Arden Zwelling um, tweet that he'd pointed out from the team's 6 through 9 hitters in the playoffs. Toronto had a better average, a better OPS, more extra base hits, and more RBI and 10 more RBI than the Dodgers bottom of the lineup. I did propose this off air at some point. I forget. We do this every day. I don't know what day it was, but I remember asking which 6 through 9 would you take? And me just sort of looking at it in my head, I thought Dodgers 6 through 9, just because you're talking about a lot more power, at least theoretically, in like Andy Pages than like an early Clement, you know. But I think it's at least in the playoffs, it's gone Toronto's way, and I think it's a good question, and it's a strength of both of these teams actually. You know, you've had other teams that are willing to have holes 7, 8, and 9 somewhere in there, and neither of these teams really has holes. There's the worst hitter in both these lineups would bat higher in other lineups around the league.
Yeah, these are quality lineups. They do it slightly different ways. The Jays, of course, leading the league in strikeout rate in a good way for hitters. That is the big question we've all been knocking around, is how much will that matter against this iteration of the Dodgers rotation? The one narrative that I would like to dispel right away is David versus Goliath. I mean, the Blue Jays are not some 87-win last wild card team in with the 22nd payroll in the league, right? They spend money. They do have ample talent on all fronts. I think, as we pointed out on the preview Thursday, you know, the rotation, they're giving up a little bit more than you'd like in that kind of line by line as you look. They're probably underdogs in every starting pitching matchup, with the closest one being what we're likely to see in game 2 with Kevin Gausman against Yamamoto. But even in that one, other than Gausman making that start at Rogers Center, you would give the edge to the Dodgers, I think, in that instance. But it's not David versus Goliath. We see enough David versus Goliath in sports, and we use that narrative enough. We don't have to use it here because it just does not apply.
No.
This is steel meeting steel. What is that? Iron sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron. You hear that on hockey shows a lot, actually. They love iron sharpens iron on hockey shows.
I think this might actually be the best teams in both leagues playing.
Correct. I agree.
It feels
even though none of us had it.
Yeah.
Well,
none of us
had
could
it
predict
because
it,
we
know.
leaned into like it's normally not chalk. You know,
right.
It's normally like we were trying to come up with the stuff that normally happens because normally it's not chalk. But this would be 2 years in a row that feel kind of chalky.
Here's the Mad Lib script for how you make a prediction, right? Like, I think a lot of us look at it and go, okay, we know this is the best team, but we know these two teams could beat the best team. So let's be cool and pick one of team 2 or team 3 to beat team 1, and then maybe do something chalky on the other side of the bracket. And that's, to me, like the way projections are often made. The good news for the Blue Jays, as mentioned with Mitch Bannon earlier, Bo Bichette is on the roster for this series. The expectation Mitch has is that we'll see Bo playing second base and George Springer DHing. We'll see how much that actually plays out. Now, the actual lineups for game 1 haven't been released at the time of this recording, so we don't know for sure. I think it's interesting, though, that Bo should be able to handle second base. We've talked about his free agent case for a while now, and that's where we expect him to end up in the long run defensively. But when you think about how one of the strengths of the Blue Jays all season long was their defensive work, moving someone on a bad leg to a new position is a little bit of a risk. It's a relatively small one, but I just wonder if that 2DH problem, only because of Bo's health, actually comes back to bite the Jays defensively at some random point in the series.
Probably, but you don't want George Springer in the field either. So,
definitely not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's like you kind of have to pick your poison a little bit, right? And I think bat-wise, if you're like, hey, one of these guys really may hurt themselves in the field, you don't want it to be George Springer. So you're like, you know what? You can sit in the dugout, just worry about hitting. That's all we need from you, right? If Bichette gets hurt and he can't play, it'll be unfortunate, but they got this far without him. So I think you also have to do that calculus a little bit too. Not saying he's going to get hurt again, but you know, you need George Springer's bat. You need George Springer's bat. They're not here without George Springer's bat. So I agree. Look, the ball always finds bad defenders. It finds guys who are not 100%. 100% Bichette's going to be
Double
involved
play
in
in
some
the
kind of
first
play.
inning.
Yeah, there's going to be something, right? It's going to find him. But I think the Jays had to pick their poison here, and I think they chose right.
Yeah, it's going to be some play that
interesting.
forces him to like move laterally or just some oddly hit
I
ball.
think a pivot at the double play would be the toughest thing to do right away. But I'm glad that they did the right thing and didn't put him in at shortstop. I mean, Andres Jimenez is a good shortstop. He's been there. Bo Bichette has been a bad shortstop. I wouldn't be surprised because the lineups are not. I wouldn't be surprised though if he's more of a pinch hitter. We'll see what happens if he starts. If he starts, then I also wouldn't be surprised if IKF relieves him of his defensive duties fairly early. Like if they get a lead, but then you're like, oh, no leads really that safe in the postseason. I think that this is a point of intrigue. Another point of intrigue that Fabian brought up that I found really interesting was when he was talking about the first time through the order, maybe Yesavage is going to be great. And then we'll have to see what happens. And he talked about the Dodgers feeling like they were having trouble making adjustments. I had seen some research that so we've seen research that the third time through the order penalty is a familiarity with shapes. Now, I'd seen somebody take that and put it on the hitters, and they found that the best hitters, part of why they are the best hitters is because the third time they see a pitcher, they're great. And so like if you separate the top of the lineup, the bottom of the lineup, when you look at bottom of the lineup hitters, the third time through the order penalty is not there really.
Yeah, it's not an evenly applied penalty, which makes sense, right? You're think about the third time through the order. Fatigue is starting to pile up a little bit, 60, 70 pitches.
But we try to look for that, try to take that out, I mean, I just think it's fascinating that part of why the best hitters are who they are is because they're so cerebral. Like they're so able to make. I mean, it's a duh thing. I'm not saying that like I'm saying something you've never heard before, but like, you might think that they're great hitters because they're physically gifted, but there's a thing about hitting that's like, no, they're also really great at like seeing something once and then being like, you do that again to me and I'm gonna get you, like I can adjust back.
I also wonder, thinking about another series-specific angle to something like that, do the pesky contact hitters, the low K percentage guys, start to have a little more success then too? Because you just think about their at-bats overall. Like they're putting balls in play the entire time, but are they making better contact that third time? Even if they're maybe rolling over something the first time instead of striking out, by the third time, are they more likely to slap something through the gap?
If you think about it in terms of physics, the contact hitter that rolls over the ball is closer to making ideal contact, than the guy who missed completely. I mean, it's just like sort of in terms of inches and the way the ball is fit, like that guy almost hit it, you just have to turn a little bit. Whereas the guy who missed completely, he's got more inches to cover. So there might be something there.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to see it at some point. The Dodgers have a rotation that they will try to push through a third time, and we'll see if it actually costs them this time around.
A weird X factor for me that just goes off of that last conversation a little bit is just foul balls. I'm just wondering if the Blue Jays guys, if they can extend some of these starting pitchers, not by necessarily taking pitches, because that's not been necessarily their forte, but if they can foul a bunch of pitches off. And that goes to our conversation. Like a foul ball, sometimes when somebody fouls it straight back, what do you say? Oh, he had that.
He was all over it.
He's all over it, right?
Except he wasn't all over it.
So I want to see how that plays out. Like, are they gonna foul a bunch of balls off? Vladdy's been fouling balls off. If they foul a bunch of balls off the first time through, the second time through, they make better contact. So that's a little sort of weird subplot for me. I'll be watching the foul balls. It's one of those things that in baseball that people don't think about that much. Like, how many times have you seen a guy hit a ball like 450 feet foul? And there's like no reaction from, the guy calling the game or anything. And that's a foul ball. And you're like, dude, that was like a homer, except it was off by like 3 feet. Like I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we should give foul balls more credit. There's more information in there than we think there is.
I actually think about foul balls a lot because Buck Showalter was obsessed with foul balls.
Yes,
and one of the things he used to always talk about
I love
was the biggest difference from AAA to the big leagues is how many foul balls there are. Like guys will strike out on pitches in AAA, and in the big leagues, the guy's going to foul off that pitch. He's going to make you make another pitch. He's going to foul it off. He said you have to like 4 or 5 pitches And you saw this. You see this in the playoffs a lot. You saw this with Skubal and the way the Mariners were able to get him out of that decisive Game 5 from all the foul balls. That's the difference between big league hitters and minor league hitters is the foul balls. And yeah, Buck will talk to you about foul balls for hours. We'll talk about the foul territory and how certain teams with more foul territory have a more advantage because they can turn those foul balls into outs. Yeah. I
did
think
try to
foul
look
balls
that
more
up
than I should.
I tried to look that up for the A's, and I could not find a home field advantage for them.
Oh my God. Every time we went to Oakland, he would talk about the foul territory. Every time.
I mean, I didn't. What I looked up was like
the bullpens used to be on the side, and so it would take up foul territory, and he'd be like, "This is not good. They're literally in the foul. They're taking up the foul territory." Like it was just anyway. You and Buck should
I would
someday
have
talk
liked
about
talking
foul
to Buck. Yeah,
you learn. It's exhausting, but it's also you learn a lot. You learn so much about the game, and like I said, I do pay attention to foul balls because I always think about Buck. But every time I got fouls it off, I'm like, "That's strike 3 in AAA. Strike 3."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I couldn't find a home field advantage in that the A's got just about as many foul outs as their opponents, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a home field advantage, because if you know you're going to get those foul balls, you can do other things. Like you can challenge more in the zone, or you know, maybe walks go down or whatever it is, you know. So it's hard to like really, you know, like really express a home field advantage in just one number, you know. I think that's what Tommy Phan, when he was trying to talk to me about like Kaufman and why it pays the way he does. And he's like, oh, they just come in the zone more because they know they won't give up homers. And I couldn't prove that was the case, but I think he's probably right that Royals pitchers know how to use the park to their advantage. Even if it's not just straight zone percentage, there's something, maybe it's zone percentage in certain counts or certain hitters or certain situations, you know?
Yeah, maybe you're not trying to bury as many pitches with 2 strikes because you'll take a ball in play. It's not pitching to contact. It's just not risking the possibility of throwing something that there's not going to chase at all.
And maybe there's parts of the strike zone that, like, maybe you're more comfortable pitching in the top of the zone than Kaufman because you're like, the fly ball won't go out, you know? So there's different ways that home field advantage comes out. But I mean, I just think that these are spoilers. These Blue Jays are spoilers. They spoil pitches.
Yes, and they did it a lot in the Seattle series too. Everyone listening or watching is now like, man, I'm going to think about you guys every time there's a foul ball in this series. Sorry, we're living rent free up here now. It's true though. It's a really interesting, not often talked about part of the game. Now, when a guy gets to like 12, 14 pitches, you'll hear the announcers go, "Great at bat," even if he strikes out. But it's not just about those mammoth at bats. It's about fouling off 2 balls, 3 balls. It's just it changes. It puts wear on the pitcher. It changes the complexion of the at bat, and
gets you close to the bullpen, which is a big deal in LA. You know, if it gets you close to the bullpen, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting. Go back to the regular season. Jays tied for second in the metric that Baseball Reference has: foul ball strikes percentage, pitches fouled off over total strikes seen. So they do that as a contact-oriented team. It's not a surprise. Very different than...
I'm glad the numbers backed me up.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for a low strikeout rate team, you would definitely expect it to be that way. Like the Yankees and Mariners, I think, were bottom 7 and bottom 12. So they're not like the Jays in that regard. Prediction time from Britt. To rehash our predictions from yesterday, Eno said Dodgers in 5, Mookie MVP. I said Dodgers in 6, Shohei MVP. Went super chalk after trying to be too cute in the previous era of making predictions on the show. I believe Trevor said Dodgers in 6 with Max Muncy as the MVP. He took my fun, air quotes, MVP pick, which is why I went chalk. Anyway, Britt, your prediction for the series: who wins, number of games, and who gets the MVP hardware?
Gosh, I don't know. You guys all went Dodgers. I kind of feel like I should go Toronto.
Do it.
I do think if Toronto's going to win the series, it's going 7.
Yeah.
I do. I'm going to go Toronto 7. Let's do it. Springer had his moment. I got to go Vladdy. I mean, he's been incredible, and I don't see him slowing down at all. And if they're going to win this series, let's be real. Vladdy's got to be Vladdy. Vladdy's not Vladdy. They don't have a chance. So. I think Vladdy. I do. They're going to have to push it to a 7. If they push it to a 7, anything can happen. So I also don't think
waffle pick. It's a conditional pick. It has to go 7. If it goes 7, the Jays win. If it doesn't go 7, give me the Dodgers.
Then don't
if it goes 7, that
me.
means that they're getting to the bullpen more. Like the Dodgers, like the Dodgers. The Dodgers can't necessarily. They have to push everyone on regular rest for the most part, so they can't be like, oh, and Yamamoto's coming on his throw date. Like maybe they'll do that, but I sort of doubt it. Like they're more like
they're gonna throw
these are our
Ohtani in the
starters.
bullpen.
Yeah.
I do think too. The Dodgers have pitched so well the starting rotation. At what point is there a fatigue factor? They have so many innings. Are they really going to go 7, 8 innings again? And if they don't, they only go 5 or 6. All of a sudden, you're like, I see a lane where Toronto wins this game.
Right.
It's kind of even when you get to the bullpens if that game is close. Neither bullpen's that good. I don't know.
Right.
So
I think I'm going to dispel one more narrative. I don't think the Dodgers saved it for the playoffs. I think they had injured guys that are less tired than other pitchers because they weren't pitching during the regular season. Like Snell and Glasnow are more fresh than they ordinarily would be in late October.
Do you think they
because
could
of the
have
time
slow
they missed
walked
previously.
some of those rehabs though?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like you could reasonably do that, but you could also do that with the actual intent of making sure the injury goes away completely, right?
Yeah.
Like there could be a good reason beyond the benefit of having more endurance later in the year, if that was
Just
even a consideration.
and knowing that everybody's talking about how bad you are at keeping arms healthy,
Yeah.
like maybe we'll just be really careful with everybody.
Maybe we'll just buy and layer more depth around the guys that we drafted and developed, and those guys will be good enough to fill in the gaps until the free agents we signed are back and ready to go. I mean,
Yeah, River Ryan's back next year. We were really excited about River Ryan. It's just every other year, the guys come back from TJ.
River Ryan, the tiger in the bathroom, so to speak, as far as a guy you might have forgotten about who will actually be important for the 2026 Dodgers in some capacity.
do you guys think Major League Baseball wants the Dodgers to win, or do they want the Blue Jays to win so they can claim like competitive balance? Though neither of these teams are great for complaining. For as we mentioned, there's no David Goliath, but I do think Toronto would at least be like, oh, look, see, we still have gone 30 plus years, or what is it, 40 years now, without a repeat back-to-back champion. See? Like,
Well,
we're
define
good
who you
here.
mean by MLB.
Or-
If you mean Manfred, I think he'd actually like the Dodgers to win because they'd like
Because of all the money.
Yeah, they'd like to say, "Oh, it's broken. You need to give us a salary cap."
Correct. And they'll make millions of dollars in merchandise sales the next day from all the Dodgers World Series
they're
stuff.
cool with
especially
the
in
Dodgers
Japan.
being a huge. I think they very clearly would rather the Dodgers win.
Right. And you're saying this in more of a tone of like what a sports book has a clear outcome they prefer because of the bets being heavily on one side.
Yes.
You're saying it like that. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's financially more lucrative.
No,
Yeah.
I'm also saying
For
it
the
from a
league.
CBA perspective.
Well, and
'cause
clearly from
CBA 's
the
up
CBA
next
Yeah,
year.
perspective.
CBA,
That
you're
is-
right. Yeah.
That
yeah,
is
CBA,
their number one bullet point is we want a salary cap. And if the Dodgers
right.
with a payroll north of $400 million win back-to-back World Series, they can throw that out there publicly and people will just continue to eat it up, and you shouldn't for so many reasons that we've talked about.
But from the health of the
you're
sport
right. So the
perspective,
players
I
union
mean,
is probably rooting for Toronto.
yeah, but from the health of the sport aspect, I think, this would have been 2 good World Series in a row, like 2 big markets, international markets, they're pretty happy with Yankees, Dodgers, and Blue Jays, Dodgers, I think.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been so happy with Brewers, Mariners, I don't think.
I would have been happy with it, but the
I would
league
have
probably
Yeah.
would have been a little sad
I
about the financials on that one.
I bought into Seattle. I was all in on Seattle. I was kind of sad they lost, but
Yeah.
oh well. Now we see if they spend and support.
They got further this year than they ever got before, a 3rd win in the ALCS. So you're just like, one more step. 4th win in the ALCS. One more step. Come on.
almost there.
It wouldn't be a Mariners story if it wasn't like this, I don't think.
A lot of pain being a Mariners fan. I can relate as a Brewers fan. A few non-playoff stories to mention before we go. It's kind of important. And the World Series happens. It gets all the attention as it deserves, but other stuff's happening. I mean, like Tony Vitello is the new manager of the Giants, former manager that turned around Tennessee's baseball program. That's kind of a big deal and a hire that surprised a lot of people. Britt, I know Max Scherzer, who actually had Vitello as a coach at Mizzou, if I remember correctly, was firmly behind Tony being a good hire and someone that will have success in the big leagues, which, maybe it's friendship. Maybe that's a legitimate endorsement. Maybe it's both. I don't know. But this was not a direction I expected the Giants to go. The name that we kept hearing was Nick Hundley for a while. Just like, okay, yeah, that kind of seems like the thing Buster would do. This is a pretty outside the box move, at least to me, as someone who wasn't all in on watching the Giants managerial search play out.
Yeah, and to be clear, Nick Hundley was offered the job. He, like last time, sorry, was that newsy? He was offered the job. Like last time, he decided that he did not want to move his family to San Francisco, didn't want to uproot them. He has a pretty cushy gig, special advisor to the Texas Rangers. So I think he really
But he actually
considered
does some work, right? Like it's not... There's some special advisors that don't do work. So he's like...
No, like if Texas travels, he's usually part of that crew. Or I've seen him, I guess, as part of that crew. Pretty heavily involved with CY in that operation in Texas. But obviously less hours, less on the family than being a manager is.
Right.
I think he really considered it this time because he played with Buster. He has a lot of respect for Buster. And I think he really molded over. And I think that was the holdup because people were like, if he wants Hundley and Hundley's the main guy, where's this? Like, why are we still waiting on this? Right. Like, I remember people talking to me about that. And I'm like, I don't know what the holdup is. Maybe they're interviewing for an experienced bench coach. I'm not sure. Then once we got this tip, myself, Ken Rosenthal, and Andrew Baggerly last Saturday, the first move was to be like, wait, what happened to Nick Hundley? Once we found out that Nick Hundley had pulled himself out, then it seemed very plausible that Buster, who was very outside the box, right? We can agree doesn't operate the way a lot of other GMs do. Then it seemed very plausible that, in fact, Vitello could be the guy. And we were able to get enough confirmation that, they were in negotiations, that this wasn't done yet, but he was now the guy, now that Hundley had pulled out of this. And, I think it's either going to go really well or really poorly. I think most people expect that. The crazy thing here that I don't think is getting enough, first off, he's not taking a pay cut. I saw like an erroneous report, and I've seen a lot of people run with this because people just read what somebody else tweets, don't confirm it for themselves, and just run with it. He's not taking a pay cut. He might, I guess theoretically, if you talk about cost of living in San Francisco versus Knoxville, he's making $3.5 million for 3 years, option for a 4th year. Okay, he was making $3 million in Tennessee. The Giants are spending a lot of money because they're also still paying Bob Melvin $4 million.
Do the Giants have to pay the buyout too? There's a buyout, isn't there?
And the buyout. There's a $3 million buyout. So the Giants are spending a lot of money rolling the dice on Vitello being the guy. I do like this move though, because it actually, if it works, once again, puts a little more power into what has become a devalued position, I think. You've got the really upper echelon. You've got the places where the manager's making a lot of money and they're really valued, and like the Craig Counsels and the AJ Hinches. And then you kind of have this trend, and we'll get to the Angels in a little bit, of like, yeah, you want to manage? You've never coached? Sure. What do you say? How about a year deal? How about we lowball you? So it feels like there's this huge dichotomy. And I do think that if Vitello does well, it will open up a little bit more of the college to pro jump. And I think in effect, because college coaches who do well, like Vitello, are well compensated, it will have a ripple effect on how managers are compensated and how we look at that manager role. And I think that that's important too. So I like this move. I think if you're not going to get your number one guy, why not roll the dice? Why not go a little bit out of the box? It was a very shocking thing to report, though, guys. It was one of those, is that true? We better make sure it's true. You can't throw something out there like that that's not 100% true. Of course, they did end up reaching the agreement, but it was a stressful Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, this was an immediate ripple through the industry. I heard from people I hadn't heard from in a while. Text messages were everywhere. This is the name of the opinion piece about this on Fangraphs from Michael Bauman. The Giants are circling the most interesting managerial hire in decades. And he talks about how, normally you have, when you're talking about categories of skippers, you got the, someone who'd been a great assistant, the Will Venables, right?
Yeah.
Or you have the grizzled baseball lifer. I mean, I guess to some extent that's a voter, right? Like just someone who's been around the game forever, Sometimes you have the front office liaison. I think that's kind of like the Jace Tinglers, some guys who'd been in the front office and also been in the dugout, you've definitely done that. And then there's a lot of ex-player types. And then there's never been a player, a college coach that wasn't an MLB player. I mean, there's just really never been a college coach that hasn't done anything in the big leagues, in a big league dugout before becoming the head coach of a team, a manager of a team. So Vitello is doing something that never really been done before. I got some texts being like, ugh, but I also got, because, he's known, he's kind of a firebrand. He's like a guy who's been pretty cocky. He's been out there for this Tennessee team, basically being like, we're the best team. And like, he has made himself a character in national media. Like everybody who follows college baseball knows Tony Vitello. But, I also got someone who is a competitor, a competing coach in the college ranks saying he is a badass, and like basically congratulating them on their hire. So there's some questions about like, when you are in college, can you like put guys on a weighted ball program and figure out their stuff plus and get a lot out of your pitchers? Because he has guys who hit 100 on the mound and hit the ball really hard. And you can maybe do that. Yeah. His friend came over. But can you do that when you're the manager of a major league team? Like that's what your PD staff does. That's what you have a whole minor league situation. It's not like you go talk to somebody who pitches for the Padres and be like, hey, come on over to the Giants and we'll give you an extra tick of gas and you'll be dominant and like, come on over here. So, you wonder if some of the, I'm going to say tricks he pulled. It's not tricks, but some of the stuff that he was able to do successfully in college, if he can do that in the majors. But I do like the idea that he's going to bring energy. If you think about the pendulum that swings almost in every, this happens the manager pendulum it's inevitable.
Yeah.
You go from nerd Gabe Kapler to dad Bob Melvin to like firebrand. Like it's like you can't just hire someone who's like the last guy. It's got to be totally different. And Tony Vitello Tony Vitello is not Bob Melvin. He is going to be energetic and he's going to say, another thing that somebody said to me in a text was, you're going to enjoy covering him because he's going to say stuff. He's going to say stuff that is controversial and he's going to say how he feels and he's going to get ejected. He's going to get ejected a lot.
Yeah. He's Scherzer. He's got a lot of Scherzer in him. They're very good friends.
Yeah.
So,
he coached him, yeah.
Not that we're going to spend a lot of time speculating on Max Scherzer's next team, but Max Scherzer to San Francisco, Verlander out, Scherzer in. Is that where we're headed? Yeah. No, it's an interesting hire. I think I think Michael Baumann framing it that way, it does make a lot of sense. We just don't ordinarily see this trajectory. At the other end, we had a surprising in the sense that his name wasn't bounced around, but like unsurprising because of the organization and its tendencies. Kurt Suzuki, hired by the Angels, getting a 1-year deal and apparently maybe some new AC.
It's a rendition of a conversation that actually happened.
Britt's going to play the role of Perry Minasian.
So I'm Sam Blum. There was an interview with Yusei Kikuchi did in the last part of the season where he said there wasn't any air conditioning in the weight room. And then Kevin Pillar came out and said similar things. Do you guys view this as an issue that you need to address in terms of amenities?
The air conditioning is great. Very cold.
It didn't break?
No.
He was lying about that?
I'm not saying he was lying. I don't know what he said. The air conditioning is fine. We take care of our players.
There are multiple players saying this publicly.
Who else said that?
Kevin Pillar went out and said that the other day.
Said the air conditioning is broken?
Said they're below on their amenities.
He said the air conditioning doesn't work?
He didn't specifically say air conditioning. He said the amenities were below standard.
So what's your question?
Do you feel that's an area you need to address?
The amenities?
Yes.
No. I think our amenities are fine. I think we have great people. I think the environment in the clubhouses here was outstanding. I think you would say the same thing.
And what's the chaser? DVR, what's the chaser? That's the shot. What's the chaser?
They posted an opening for an HVAC technician hours after this exchange happens. I mean, part-time, but yeah, $39.38 an hour minus union dues.
Oh, I'm sorry. We missed some other Perry gems. Later on, he said, he said what he said, Sam said, and he said, Perry goes, did he say the environment wasn't good? And then Sam said, no, he said the air conditioning was broken. And Perry goes, so what does this have to do with all the amenities? What? This keeps getting better. And then he says, before they hired hours before they post the HVAC, Perry says, the air conditioning, we've never had an issue with it. That would be something for him. For us, he never complained all year about the amenities or anything like that. I think he's very happy being.
Lovely. Just
gaslighting
lovely.
101.
I really feel like that exchange, like if you just entered the fray as a baseball fan in the last couple of weeks, you're like, what are these Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim all about? And if the question itself didn't already get your brain kind of wondering, like that's a weird way to describe where
it's
your
a
team's
weird
located.
Name.
Yeah, wouldn't have chose that name. That exchange tells you just about everything you need to know about the Angels in about 16 lines.
Incredible.
What are they doing
my
over
God.
there? I have no words. And it's not even the worst thing happening in the organization right now.
Oh my
The
gosh,
whole confusion over the AC and then saying, well, what about the amenities? The AC is an amenity. 1. And 2, it's not even really an amenity. It's like a basic necessity. So the way that whole thing kept trying to get Sam Bloom, to his credit, Sam stuck his ground. He kept trying to get Sam Bloom, and I've been in these situations. He's bullying him. He's trying to get him to change his question. He's trying to make Sam look like a fool by saying, like, no, or what? The AC? Like, he's trying to get Sam to stop, and Sam does not stop, and Perry just makes himself look worse and worse and worse and worse.
And, the other thing you alluded to is that there's a trial going on right now that, by Tyler Skaggs, who died of a drug overdose, that, against the Angels for being negligent or for somehow, being complicit in this. And part of this process has been, discovering what the clubhouse is like and how they treated one of their employees that was the one who gave the drugs to that Tyler Skaggs. One of the things that has happened is that Mike Trout, who's the face of the Angels, who has the long-term contract, who's going to go into the Hall of Fame with the Angels hat on, and has usually deferred when it comes to questions about who's the GM or who's the manager, and be like, oh, they make those decisions. And he's usually been a company man and been like, yes, I'm an Angel for life, and I'm not. He hasn't requested a trade or anything. He's been like, he took his own lawyer into this situation because he wanted to make sure that his butt was covered and that he had his own representation separate from the teams. But Mike Trout himself, who has so far been so squeaky clean, I mean, he's been the face of baseball at times before Shohei, and he comes off looking terrible because, here's this passage from another Sam Blum story. He was questioned about and admitted to conducting dares in the clubhouse, some of which included then teammates Albert Pujols and Cole Calhoun. They involved Kay, the employee that gave Skaggs the drugs, eating a popped pimple off of Trout's back, taking a 90-mile-per-hour fastball to the leg, taking a football throw by Calhoun off the head while wearing a Philadelphia Eagles helmet, eating a bug off the clubhouse floor, and shaving his eyebrows. I'm not proud of it, Trout said. So, the Angels Club is also the one that stopped paying all of its employees during COVID. It's a team that has refused to invest in amenities. Yes, amenities, but also in player development, anything that isn't the roster itself. That's threatened to move. It's threatened, it's asked for it's asked for a new park like every other owner, but also asked for, a bunch of real estate around the park, and been put up for sale and then taken down for sale like a day later, So this is a ridiculous organization. It's doesn't look good any way you look at it.
No, at every single turn, Sam does a great job covering that circus on a regular basis. Sometimes there are just no words. I feel like it's only fair. Like if you own a professional sports team and you receive the trophy when your team wins a title, you get it first. That's the way it works in America, right? You get the trophy because you own the team. I feel like there needs to be an award for the worst organization in the league. And I feel like the owner also has to stand there and receive that award too, right? You don't just get the highs. You also got to take the lows.
Give us, as the media, more access to the owners. Like, make them, be in press conferences. But they're going to take if they're going to take the whole thing, they should have some accountability, right? They should be there.
It's true.
You should recognize
the end of
face.
Year press conferences should be owner, GM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you just feel like
commissioner for a day thing. They should have to talk once a quarter. You want to be an anonymous billionaire? Don't buy a sports team. Do something else with your money.
All right, a public-facing role.
I couldn't agree more. And it should be noted that when they introduced Kurt Suzuki, Artie Moreno was missing. It was just Perry and Kurt, which is usually
on a one-year deal.
Which
nobody ever does that to managers. 1-year deals. That's if you're a player that doesn't like Kurt Suzuki, you have no incentive to figure it out. Just like he's going to be gone. I just got to wait till the end of the year.
Well, even if they gave him a 3-year deal, it feels like the Angels just clear house every 2 years anyway. All the coaches are gone. Everything is gone. They're going to have a real hard time, as Sam notes, getting coaches that want to work on 1-year deals. So you're going to get the coaches that aren't as good, because all the good coaches are going to want longer deals than that, especially as we look at a potential lockout after next season. They're going to want to know that they have a deal. So you are setting up the players to fail, Kurt to fail, and that new coaching to fail.
This is true of any fan of any team, anytime. You're always free to just change your fanhood, but Angels fans, please just pick something else. Anyone. Just grab the map of the other teams in the league. Maybe just if you don't want to be a Dodgers fan,
throw a dart.
Throw a dart at it and just start over. You have full support from this pod if that is the direction you'd like to go. Some other beyond the playoff news, I saw Matt Arnold got a promotion, president of baseball operations now in Milwaukee. He's been there at the helm since David Stearns left for the Mets job. He's been there 10 years now. So Matt Arnold, a big part of what they do in that organization. He gets the bump. And the other news that I saw roll by, we know the location of the first 4 teams of the WPBL, Women's Professional Baseball League, New York, Boston, San Francisco, and LA. I thought at one point they were talking about 6 teams to start. So we'll see if we get 2 more between now and May of 2026. But I think the question I had with this league launching and knowing that Athletes Unlimited Softball League, the league that Kim Eng is a big part of, that also launched recently. And we have pretty rapid increase in viewership on college softball. I'm hoping and wondering if these leagues can coexist simultaneously. Is there enough there as far as infrastructure, players, and just making it kind of work in concert? That to me is just the only question. I hope the answer is a resounding yes, but I don't know enough about the player pool in the women's game to know how viable 2 leagues concurrently are, even though baseball and softball are not the same thing, very clearly.
Yeah, that was my first thought too. Is there enough? Are we have enough of stage, enough spotlight, enough revenue? I don't know.
And also
I guess
just
we're going to find out.
Enough players, but the spigot for women's softball, like a women's pro softball league, is on. There are college programs. There's you can just go boop boop boop. You can play a D1 program and then get drafted. And I would think that would be set up for success better than a pro women's baseball league where we see young girls playing little league baseball. And then there isn't really an easy pathway for them to continue playing baseball after that. Usually what happens to those girls that play little league baseball is they end up playing softball.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just isn't a really organized situation for them to keep playing baseball.
And I think the hope, part of the effort behind the league is to have an endpoint that will enable girls to continue playing baseball longer because there is something eventually.
The middle's
to play.
not filled in.
Right, but they
Yeah,
need the
what
middle.
do
They need
you
the
do?
bridge.
Yeah.
You need
Yeah,
more
and
of a bridge.
You lose women because, like, Jen Powell, the first female umpire, this is what happened to her. She wanted to play baseball growing up. She played in Little League, but then she switched to softball and eventually got a softball college scholarship because you're not going to get a women's baseball college scholarship as it stands right now. So then she went that avenue. So for her to stay in baseball, she had to move behind the plate, which I found kind of interesting. But yeah, the infrastructure hasn't been built up enough that, are there high schools offering this? I don't think so. Or not enough of them, right? So I don't know what you're going to do with that. It'll be kind of interesting, I guess, to see. I like the idea. I don't know if it's going to be set up well enough compared to softball.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I hope it succeeds. I'm just genuinely curious how it's actually going to come together. May 2026 is when the league is scheduled to begin. Draft is coming up sometime soon. I didn't see an exact date on the draft just yet. Was there 600 players that went to the tryout in DC in August? That was that's enough players to fill 4 teams. Like, no question about that. So I'm kind of excited to see how this goes. We are going to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can join our Discord. We'll have our World Series game chats running throughout the entire series between Blue Jays and Dodgers. Of course, we'll talk about that series at every single turn, and we'll keep our eyes open for news beyond the World Series in the weeks ahead. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.